Sowa's Law of Standards by Clayton Harkey, Ryan Nealon, Andrea Yanes. John Florian Sowa, born in 1940, is the computer scientist who invented conceptual graphs, a graphic notation for logic and natural language, based on the structures in semantic networks and on the existential graphs of Charles S. Peirce. After early retirement at IBM, Sowa, in 2001, co-founded Vivo Mind Intelligence Incorporated. This company is developing data mining and database technology, more specific, high-level ontologies for artificial intelligence and automated natural language understanding. On March 22, 1991, Sowa first stated his Law of Standards, which is, whenever a major organization develops a new system as an official standard for X, the primary result is the widespread adoption of some simpler system as a de facto standard for X. Some examples. The PL1 project by IBM and Share resulted in Fortran and COBOL becoming the de facto standards for scientific and business computing. The ALGOL 68 project by IF-IPS resulted in Pascal becoming the de facto standard for academic computing. The ADA project by the U.S. Department of Defense resulted in the language C becoming the de facto standard for system programming. The OS/2 project by IBM and Microsoft resulted in Windows becoming the de facto standard for desktop computing. A de facto standard is a custom, convention, product, or system that has achieved a dominant position by public acceptance or market forces, such as an early entrance to the market. De facto is a Latin phrase that means concerning fact. De facto means existing in fact or in practice but not necessarily ordained by law, or in practice or actuality but not officially established. PL1, or Programming Language 1, is a procedural, imperative computer programming language designed for scientific, engineering, business, and systems programming applications. It has been used by various academic, commercial, and industrial organizations since it was introduced in the 1960s and continues to be actively used as of 2011. COBOL is one of the oldest programming languages. Primarily designed by Grace Hopper, its name is an acronym for Common Business Oriented Language, defining its primary domain in business, finance, and administrative systems for companies and governments. Fortran is a general-purpose, imperative programming language that is especially suited to numeric computation and scientific computing. It is one of the most popular languages in the area of high-performance computing and is the language used for programs that benchmark and rank the world's fastest supercomputers. ALGOL 68, short for Algorithmic Language 1968, is an imperative computer programming language that was conceived as a successor to the ALGOL 60 programming language, designed with the goal of a much wider scope of application and more rigorously defined syntax and semantics. Pascal is an influential, imperative, and procedural programming language, designed in 1968 to 1969 and published in 1970 by Nicholas Wirth as a small and efficient language intended to encourage good programming practices using structured programming and data structuring. ADA is a structured, statically typed, imperative, wide-spectrum, and object-oriented, high-level computer programming language, extended from Pascal and other languages. It has built-in language support for explicit concurrency, offering task, synchronous message passing, protected objects, and non-determinism. The Department of Defense is the executive department of the government of the United States of America, charged with coordinating and supervising all agencies and functions of the government concerned directly with national security and the United States Armed Forces. OS/2 is a series of computer operating systems, initially created by Microsoft and IBM, then later developed by IBM exclusively. The name stands for Operating System /2, because it was introduced as part of the same generation change release as IBM's Personal System /2, or PS/2, line of second-generation personal computers. The first version was released in December 1987, and newer versions were released until December 2001. Microsoft Windows is a series of graphical interface operating systems developed, marketed, and sold by Microsoft. The Linux kernel is a single code base that runs on everything from embedded systems, handheld computers, and wearable computers to some of the largest supercomputers. Instead of spreading to all environments, the Windows code base has fragmented into multiple incompatible systems labeled 95, 98, ME, NT, CE, W2K, and XP. Microsoft is dropping support for the older versions, but they plan to produce a new version codenamed Longhorn, which threatens to make all current versions obsolete. Most graphic applications are being written for platform-independent browsers in languages such as Java and C that run on Linux, Windows, and most versions of Unix. The formerly fragmented Unix systems are becoming more compatible by supporting Linux compatibility packages. While Linux has improved its support for the POSIX standards, major IT companies that had been promoting their own proprietary operating systems have switched their allegiance to Linux. The premier example is the biggest IT company of all, IBM, which has adopted Linux as the strategic OS for all their hardware. Other companies, such as Oracle, develop all their software on Linux and port the results to other platforms such as Windows and Unix. Organizations with limited budgets, especially schools and governments, have been moving en masse to Linux, especially in developing countries such as China and Brazil. This trend is increasing even in Europe, Canada, and the United States. Gall's law is a rule of thumb from John Gall's Systemantics, how systems really work and how they fail. A complex system that works is invariably found to have evolved from a simple system that worked. The inverse proposition also appears to be true. A complex system designed from scratch never works and cannot be made to work. You have to start over, beginning with a working, simple system. Systemantics, a change in typography and underlining indicate that the title is better rendered as System Antics, is a commentary on systems, theory, and general semantics, publications by such thinkers as Ludwig von Bertalanffy and Alfred Korzybski. Although dubbed Gall's Law by some, the actual quote is not labeled as such in the original work. The work cites Murphy's Law and Peter Principle and is filled with similar sayings. Although the quote may seem to validate the merits of simple systems, it is preceded by the qualifier, a simple system may or may not work. This philosophy can also be attributed to extreme programming, which encourages doing the simplest thing first and adding functionality later. This is an example of the difference between the newspaper and Twitter. The newspaper was the de facto standard of when it came to being informed, but Twitter came along with a faster way to be informed 24/7. On the topic of PCs and laptops, the laptop and the PC were the de facto standard, but now the tablets have taken control of the market. On the topic of communication, the home phone was the de facto standard until the mobile phones came along. As far as shopping, malls were the de facto standard until online shopping proposed an easier and less stressful way to shop. And then we come to social media. MySpace was the de facto standard, but Facebook proposed a simpler way to communicate with friends. These are the sources that we used when acquiring the information for this PowerPoint.